I'd like to introduce Adrian Lucas Healy from Yarra City Council and Zach Lovett from Richmond Youth Club, who will be presenting on the Richmond Youth Hub. Hello, Adrian. Adrian is an evaluation and research officer from Yarra City Council who's worked with children, young people and families spanning the fields of education, youth work, community development, social planning and research. Throughout this career, Adrian has developed a voice-centered relational practice which empowers children and young people by working collaboratively to ensure that their lived experience influences the decisions that guide the policies and service practices which affect them. Zach is a team leader and Richmond Youth Hub and is a proud Gundjemarra man who boasts a remarkable background in youth engagement and community development, enriched by his diverse experience in music production, carpentry, and leadership in Youth Hub's multi-skilled. Zach has proven experience supporting young people in family violence prevention and cultural healing, coupled with his passion for empowering youth, makes him a strong advocate for young people in the community. Over to you, Adrian and Zach, and welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. Firstly, I'm Zach Lovett. I'm a proud Gundjemarra man, and I'm just going to do an acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge the traditional landowners of the country that I'm currently zooming in on, which is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. Pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and any Indigenous people in the room, and pay my respects to my elders as well, with my links back to Gundjemarra. Thank you.
Hey, so I'm Adrian, the Evaluation Research Officer, as was said, and we're here today to talk about Richmond Youth Hub, which is a facility that I've been involved in evaluating and working on reporting to sort of keep the wheels turning in the background, along with Zach and another rest of the team. So just briefly, Richmond Youth Hub, basically, it's a youth space that's located at the bottom of a tower in a high-rise public housing estate in North Richmond in the northeast of Melbourne. And it provides, basically, it's a space that provides co-located facilities for service providers from different organizations. And it's also sort of like a launching pad for youth programs that are delivered there 5 days a week directly onto the estate. And as a service, trying to sort of figure out from a research evaluation perspective how to sort of describe what the service is, we've sort of settled on this idea that it really is a sort of a 3-component beast, and that it's sort of on one level, it's a bricks and mortar facility. So, you know, it's a space that has to be set up, and it's a space that's used to facilitate work and facilitate relationships. And it's a bricks and mortar thing with all of the trials and tribulations that come with a building. It's also a suite of programs that are tailored to and sort of delivered in partnership with and the community that services on the estate. And it's also a model for integration. So it's sort of it's a locus for bringing things into the community and integrating stuff into the community that may not previously have had access to. To give a little bit of background on the project before I throw to Zach to talk about the work that happens there, one thing that's really important about it is that it was actually initiated by young people, completely independent of council, any politicians and public servants. Young people on the estate came to the council with a petition basically advocating for the need for a safe space. I don't know how familiar people are with North Richmond, but it's quite a troubled part of the inner north. And there's like a prevalence of sort of drugs and violence and a lot of crime-related issues in the estate and sort of surrounding areas. And the young people basically said that they're experiencing a high degree of atomization and sort of social isolation because there was nowhere safe for them to connect with one another outside of the home and outside of school. So they came to us with a proposal essentially that they wanted a safe space. And this sort of was the launching pad for a process between council and the state government, Department of Family Fairness and Housing and the Office for Housing. And council saw this as an opportunity to sort of like provide outreach into a community that was very difficult to find inroads into in order to work with them to make sure that their needs are being met. And so this sort of started a partnership, as I said, with the state government, and the Victorian government basically provide us with a physical space and operating budget, and council, through the fantastic work of Zach, we deliver the actual programs on the ground and manage the facility I'm going to throw over to Zach to talk about the first two of the three components, and I'm going to jump back in at the third.
Beautiful. Thanks, Adrian. So the first component of the hub is really about just creating a safe space. Having the space as an extension of the young people's living room, and that's a sentence that they use. I would love to say that I claim that, but they have, every time that I speak to a young person in the space, that's a lot of the reflection that we get back from them. So, and that's down to the color schemes that we've picked. I don't know if you can see in that picture. I'm pointing at a screen. Sorry, guys. We've got bright yellow doors, blue, lots of purples, pinks, bright colors, welcoming colors. A lot of the furniture set up so you're sitting in a group's space and in a circle. And we are always trying to share rituals like food. I'm a curry fella anyway, so having a feed with people will always break down barriers and build relationships, I think. So that's a massive part of the space as well. And then we also use the space to try and just foster connections with not just their peers in the estate, but the co-locating services, whether it's youth workers. We're about to start to have some nurses on site from North Richmond Community Health. Their families are welcome in, and we always are trying to just get the older cohort of young people to try and mentor the younger ones as well, in kind of like a feedback loopy style, but it also just has that community feel to it, I think, when that happens. Yeah. I'll hand over to Adrian.
Not yet.
Not yet? Sorry. We're in different rooms. Can you switch that? Beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. So the programs that we run are we have 4 programs over the week, and they're all kind of catered for different age brackets of young people that live on the estate or have access to Richmond, whether it's Richmond High School or their parents are on the estate or working on the estate as well. It's all kind of prioritized about having fun new experiences and teaching them how to take safe risks in the environment they're surrounded in, which is always a positive, I think. We also try and co-design a lot of co-design a lot of our programs with the young people, in the hope that they can use the skills that they're learning and the real world skills that they're learning with us outside of the programs as well. And obviously, touching on what Dan was saying before, if you're talking to young people and you're giving them the space to tell you what they want or asking them right questions about what they need, they'll always give you the answers. They're so willing to share that with you when you can create the safe spaces for them to. Sorry, the programs are encouraged to be a soft entry point for any of the young people that are kind of resistant to any of the services or programs that they've got offered to them already on the estate, whether it be school, education, health services, anything like that. And then we always try and encourage them to promote that inside the community as well, to bring more young people in and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that sort of sets the tone for the integration model. So essentially, we use the office spaces that we have access to try and bring services into the community. It's a small sort of bank of desks and stuff inside the hub. And we use co-location, as we said, as an entry point, not just for young people to be able to access services, but also for services to be able to find kind of a pathway into the community. Obviously, community housing is sort of quite a marginalized environment and marginalizing environment, and it creates a sort of insular sort of experience due to bad experiences. And so the hub basically provides a physical space for people who provide services to come into the community and sort of forge relationships. One thing that's really important, we found this a lot during evaluations of the service, is that young people regard services that have been allowed to come into the hub as sort of vetted. Which means that, there's this instant sort of assumption that they're trustworthy because the hub has allowed them in. And obviously that provides a basis for services that previously had great difficulty sort of finding a way to kind of connect with the community, to kind of come into the community. And co-location ensures that once those relationships have sort of been brokered to begin, that there's a continuity, that young people know that they can rely on people to be in the space and to be, essentially in their home, because it's at the bottom of the tower where people are living in. And it brings lots of diverse disciplines together around programs. Programs are really important because it sets this expectation that service delivery is relationship based, and essentially that people who come in to deliver services come in and also spend time as participants in programs, which means that they're there socially, connecting with young people informally, and just kind of talking to young people and talking to people as people, not as like a young person that's something that they work with. And that's really great because it allows sort of actual human relationships to develop, but also it empowers young people rather than having services like referral processes where workers are sort of shunting a young person off to an adult. It allows young people to kind of actually choose how and when and if they engage with a service, because they can walk up to a person and say, I'm experiencing a thing. Can I talk to you about it? I know that you work in this field. And so it sort of inverts the power dynamic with the services and the way that they relate to young people.
Which kind of builds the culture that we're trying to build in the hub, and introduce like the normalization of asking for help. And if the young people can see their peers coming up to the youth workers or the nurses or anybody that we've got on site, it kind of breaks that stigma for them. And just off this slide anyway, because I'm going to just go off the top for a second. I think it's really like important as well that the way that we build our relationships in the hub is that when a young person comes in and a staff member or anybody comes in, that we're all on an equal playing field. There is no real hierarchy. I'm not the team leader. I'm just here with everybody contributing and being a part of the space and trying to have fun and build relationships. And there is no kind of it breaks that barrier. So when someone is wanting to talk or ask for help, it's not hard for them to come up and have that conversation. Thanks.
Cool.
So we'll touch on a case study now that we've put together from one of the young people. This particular young person is from a refugee background, and was sent back to their family's country of origin after getting in trouble a little bit when they came to Australia. So when they were back overseas or at home, a young person discovered that they'd had a massive passion for community and culture and music. So they started toying with the idea of developing cultural events and community events while they were back in their country of origin. And when they returned back to Australia, they really kind of struggled to integrate back into education, like a state as a whole, I think, and just community around here. Which then, if you could go, all good. Which then led them to start coming to the space because they built a relationship with the lead worker here but through a previous program that was being run on the estate. And they were just really coming so that they could use the Richmond Youth Hub as a place to socialise, and started regularly attending the drop-in sessions. And in doing so, started to feel a little bit more comfortable to talk to people about how they were struggling with issues at school and what their aspirations were about their music and cultural events they wanted to start to organise in Melbourne. So that led us to be able to brokerage and support and advocate for the young person to re-engage back in school. And through doing that, they've then linked with one of our youth development officers who mentored them into applying for a community grant, which was then used to initiate a community music initiative. And while that was happening, this young person ended up completing their VCE or equivalent, and launched their community music video program, which was based around challenging the negative stereotypes on the community on the estate. In the initiative that they launched, they established a partnership with a local music studio to train young people. They had paid positions for other young people on the estate. They promoted videos, they produced videos. This is still going. They're currently about to apply for another one, which has happened since we've put this slide together. And they also recently just threw a massive community event out in the west of Melbourne somewhere, I think. And had, by all accounts, massive attendance, and it was ticketed. They flew and music acts in from Sydney. It was, a really good community event by all accounts.
So just to end on a tiny downer note, because we've just to bring things back to reality, wanted to talk about a couple of the barriers with setting up this space, because it's sort of important to, I guess, say this work sounds incredible, but it's important to kind of understand some of the practical and pragmatic limitations around sort of trying to do this. And some of the things that we've encountered over the years that this program's been running, particularly post-COVID, funding has been has become kind of like a difficult thing to keep in place, because the key of Richmond Youth Hub is that it's a consistent presence, that it's a part of the community, it's like a bedrock. But dealing with a lot of budgetary austerity, particularly around kind of post-COVID spending and so forth, it's become almost a full-time job to sort of maintain funding, to be in constant advocacy and report to the state government to make sure that they keep adding us to their budget, and also to support the co-located services so that they don't have their budgets dry up, so that we can kind of help them to be in a better advocating position, because consistency is key to relationships, and relationships are key to the hub, and unfortunately money is what keeps the whole thing ticking along. And another thing I think that's really important to acknowledge, so the hub was set up as a response to community safety, and in order to sort of have an impact on that, we have to be kind of entangled in the reality of the drugs and crime and violence of the estate. And on the one hand, we have had a very tangible material impact on safety on the estate, but on the other hand, we also have to continuously manage and mitigate, the actual issue, because we're not sort of separated from it, we're dumped in it, and so there's a lot of kind of critical incidents, and a lot of kind of consideration needs to be taken into thinking about how we manage the physical space, how we set up programs, how we move through the space, how young people come to and from program, because it's being on the estate means there's less barriers, but it also means that it's still kind of entangled in the issues. And so we actually rather than sort of being a service that young people kind of have to leave the context for, we're now in that context too. So a lot of the experiences of the young people are experiences that we also have to manage, running a service inside that environment. And then the third issue is space. So it's a physical space, it's bricks and mortar, and unfortunately the bricks and mortar has a hard physical limit. And so with a program like this, you sort of end up becoming a bit of you sort of become a victim of your own success, because as the thing gains momentum, as you kind of get young people, as you get interest, as there's more sort of kind of co-location opportunities for services, and people start to see the benefits to young people and so forth and so on, you end up having to kind of manage, how do you do all of this in, because it's quite a tiny space. I mean, I'm not sure if people could get a sense of it from the pictures, but it's about the size of a living room with a back patio, and a kitchen that's contained inside. And so it's how do you do all of this in 4 walls? And the 4 walls start to feel smaller and smaller. And so there's been a lot of, we've had to get very creative in how we kind of facilitate space and how we advocate to the state government around the way that the estate can be used to support this work. And so these are sort of three things that we have to kind of manage consistently in order to make all of this other stuff happen. And that is the end of our presentation, which I hope fit into the time limit.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome. I'll jump in there then. Thanks so much, Zach and Adrian. I think everyone's just been absolutely enthralled by everything that you said. There's some really positive comments coming through the chat. And Adrian, something that stood out for me is the way that you highlighted that young people have choice in how they access the service. And I think that's so important, because it demonstrates how much you value autonomy, young people's autonomy, which is, we know is really, really important. And Zach, you just paint such a lovely picture of the space, the way you describe sharing food and having conversations together was just really lovely imagery to put in our heads. So yeah, thanks so much for that. We have had some questions coming through the chat. The first one I've got here is from Janet. So Janet has said, the time to engage and develop relationships in a safe space is clearly critical to how we get young people to engage with services. Do you have any strategies for those working within services with strict time constraints to manage this? It's a really good question. Would either of you like to take that one?
Food. Food is like honestly, and I say this like it is a joke, but it's not a joke. Food is like, we all know that breaking bread with each other is something that's communal. That's like, we culturally all do it. And then a lot of the young people that are accessing these services, like accessing services like this because they for respite from, it might be home, it might be from wherever they are. So food is a huge like component of just being able to sit down and break a barrier so you can have a conversation. Like, especially like, I can speak off the background of working with young mob for a long time too. Like, if I walked in with a Subway, I'm their best friend. Like, it makes it easy, but it's also something that's truly like a shared experience, and like is it like, yeah, holds a ritual, I think.
Yeah, also a lot of my work is very time limited because I'm sort of coming in and out of the service. Most of my work's in the background, but I spend a lot of time in the service talking to young people. I do a lot of semi-structured interviews with young people about how the service is impacting them, and we do it on site. So I kind of walk around with a giant sack of lollies, and the first question I'm normally asking people is like, what lollies should I be having in the sack so that people will be enticed to talk to me? Because anyway. And I've kind of become the guy with too much sugar.
Yes. I also think just like having that, like I touched on before and Dan touched on the previous presentation, like just not having a high, like not lowering yourself down and not bringing them, there is no level. Like, as soon as you enter a space, and I used to say this at my old hub, and I haven't had the chance to do it yet because I haven't had an elder come in, or like someone of that stature from the community come in, but we're all on the equal playing field unless you're like an elder or a mum or someone coming in here. We're all just in this space to try and contribute to each other and upskill and learn and like harbor that, I think.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I'll jump in. Hey folks, I'm Sam. I really loved the presentation. One of the things I was reflecting on was just the kind of the pride that you had in what you've achieved as a team and your own contributions, but then the kind of acknowledgement of those challenges and barriers, which isn't an easy space to get into, that kind of vulnerability of being able to say, look, this is not easy. We're not always winning. There are some real challenges to overcome. So just kind of wanted to appreciate that from you both. My question is just around keeping that kind of youth-led, community-led feel to it. It sounds like that was the real kind of driving force for it. How do you maintain that over time to enable young people to feel like they've got some ownership or influence over decisions and services and whatnot?
Basically, every decision that's made surrounding the hub and the programs, anything that's coming in, is taken to the young people. And there's kind of we've got a leadership group and committee that we have, like that meet like a steering group, but we also have like another like, I guess, like the clear leaders in the space already that might not be engaged in that group, and we'll sit down together and be like, hey, we're thinking about, and like I'm in the middle of doing this with bringing nurses in and being like, hey, I want to promote health here. How would this work for you guys? What do you guys want to talk about? This, that, and the third. It's always seems to be the best way, I think.
I remember last year I was talking to a young person about this very issue because we were trying to understand and trying to figure out how to communicate how co-design is sort of like the ethos of and doing evaluation. You always have to kind of try and turn everything into a model, which is I hate the word model because it's kind of, anyway. And I remember a young person, we were talking about it, and a young person said to me, but every conversation is a consultation. And so one thing that like really strikes me with Richmond Youth Hub as a kind of a person that's very enmeshed in it, but also to the side of it, I can see that young people are kind of expressing opinions, or there's no sort of delineation between a conversation that is just an informal people talking about their feelings and a conversation that is taken seriously as feedback. a young person says something, as you know, and it's taken seriously, this, you know, as something that should be considered. And so I think the thing is, there is no, as Zach said, there's no hierarchy, but also there's kind of like, if a young person said, oh, it'd be better if this was like that, then it's like, well, okay, let's talk about that. You know, what could that be? And so it's like there, every minute of every moment that young people are in the space and expressing themselves about the experience of being in the space is an experience, is consultation. It is co-design. Co-design is just organically, oh, a young person said that we could try this, so let's have a look about that, you know, next week, and we'll like touch base with them in between. And yeah, and so it's like there is no delineation. And another thing I find interesting again also is, like, as young people get older and become kind of more senior in the space, they sort of start to kind of take in the way that they talk about the space. The older young people, it's like they should be on staff because they act like staff members. They talk like staff members. They, you know, they'll come up to me and want to know about like what's the progress on on this year's evaluation. It's sort of, you know, I feel like I'm dealing with colleagues when I'm dealing with the younger people, because they've been taken so seriously by Zach and the team and the people that come before them, that they kind of organically step into this role of like, as if they do run the place, because they kind of do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's a cumulative kind of effort. The more you respond to their feedback and take their ideas seriously, the more trust will be formed and the more they feel part of that community. Yeah, really, really powerful. Thank you. Zach, I'm not sure, maybe you had one last comment to make.
I was just going to say that I always tell the young people that we don't run the space, they do. We've just got the keys. Like, that's,
yeah,
like, we just are here to open the doors for them, and they do all the work.
Brilliant. Great soundbite to end on. Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
To you both. I'll pass back to you, Mandy.
Oh, fabulous. Really great. Really exploring very similar themes, but in a totally different context. And it just shows it takes a village, really. I've just learned, I've got every conversation is a consultation. And we don't own the space. We're here to open the doors for you.